Moving on to the tight end group, a group that obviously prefaced by George Kittle, but the 49ers have interestingly had four tight ends this year on the 53-man roster with Kittle, Warner, Dwelly, and Tyler Croft. What's your evaluation of that group?
Yeah, I think this group, I'm giving them a C plus. I'm giving them a little bit higher than the wide receivers, and I think part of that is because I think both the wide receivers and tight ends do a good job of blocking. Tight ends are obviously
Hmm.
more impactful in the run blocking than receivers, or they're more involved, I guess I should say, because of their alignment in the scheme of things. Um, and the reason they get a C plus instead of a C though is because they don't have the drops quite as much, right? Uh, other than one guy, Charlie Warner, who has
Yeah.
I think he's from Stonehenge because that's what his hands are like. He's had two targets, two deep balls, both of them bounced off of his hands. Other than that, the tight ends don't have any drops. Um, George Kittle's been George Kittle. He's among the best top blockers in the league. We've seen him come on in the last few weeks. Since everybody got up in arms over his lack of targets, those targets have increased the last 3 weeks. So that's been good for my fantasy football team. Um, Good for the 49ers too. And then also Ross Dwelly and Tyler Croft. I think they're two guys who are a little underappreciated or undervalued. They're just not getting, they're a good tight end three players, right?
Yeah.
The only reason they're tight end three is because of the blocking. I think, really, I think that you should have both Croft and Dwelly competing for that tight end two spot.
Yeah, I think that your analysis is good, and coincidentally, I have the same grade. I am giving the tight ends a C plus this year. Kittle has been all right. He obviously had a slower start, but you don't normally attribute that to Kittle. Um, it was just the way that he was utilizing a bit, and it's fine because to me, I didn't have really a problem given how impactful he was in the running game. Kittle and Warner have been good blockers in the running game this year for sure. I think that part of their game goes understated, and really that's the only part of Warner's game because he can't catch. So that's a huge element of Kittle and Warner's game, and I think that has gotten understated. In the receiving game, though, obviously Kittle now is the third leading receiver for the 49ers, 319 yards on the year, and he has the two touchdowns coming along a little more. I expect a better, more consistent kind of games from Kittle over the next couple of games or over the second half of the season. Dwelly, limited opportunity, done well with a limited opportunity. Warner, limited opportunity, done poorly with a limited opportunity. You balance it out, you get a little bit above average in general. And like you said, Tyler Croft, probably underrated at the moment, but can't get the on the field, had the MCL injury. And so we'll see what his role potentially could be if they could eclipse Charlie Warner on the depth chart.
Well, and this is real quick since we're on tight ends. I think we were talking about you mentioned Christian McCaffrey and his impact possibly on Debo Samuel. I think since we're talking about tight ends, we need to talk about the impact that Christian McCaffrey's already shown on George Kittle. I think you look at
Yeah.
the two of them on Sunday. There was a number of times where they're aligned on the same side of the field together, and you're seeing one guy open up the other. Whether it's Christian McCaffrey pulling the coverage down, which is opening up Kittle down the field for the shot down the seam on the left side, or for the touchdown as well that wrapped it
Yeah.
up, or a couple of times where you see Kittle taking off down the field and pulling the linebacker all the way, and McCaffrey being able to easily make a catch and run after. So I think that's probably the combination that's going to be a lot of fun to see if that can continue on.
No, I do agree too, and I think that it'll help both players because both
Mm-hmm.
players obviously warrant enough attention and cause distractions alongside a defense. So definitely both players will have an impact, and that kind of goes back to the understated element where you're not going to see that on a stat sheet, you're not going to see that in a scorebook, but it's an element that will be helpful for both players, like on the film.
Yes, I agree. I think it's gonna. I'm really interested in seeing how this whole thing works out with McCaffrey because I really liked him. I don't know if we've talked since. I know we talked prior to the trade, and I
Yeah.
told you that that why I was excited about it. Uh, but I just see a guy who fits perfectly what the 49ers do, and I have zero problem with all the draft picks that they gave up to get him because
100%.
they weren't going to get somebody in 2, 3, or 4 of next year's draft that's going to give them the productivity that Christian McCaffrey will give them.
Right. And even if it did, it's unlikely that it happens during the window that the 49ers want. This window is in the next 2 to 3 years. I didn't have a problem just given that the player is good, the contract is good, the fit is good, and the draft capital isn't as much when given the amount of draft picks that the 49ers do have in the mid to late rounds in the next 2 years as well.
Correct.